These graphics are terrible. This is not this is not high-end visuals by any stretch of the imagination, but it does not matter whatsoever. Hey, what's up, Dusk here? So let's talk about why Schedule 1 is such an addicting game. Now, really, this is going to be a bit of a commendation. How do you say that? Something. It condemns AAA and their silly practices. But why is Schedule 1 so good? Why is it so fun? Right? Because I've talked to a few people, and all our initial consensus was that we actually have no idea why the game is fun, or why we continue to, like, need to play it so aggressively. So I just had to put some thought into it. I was like, why? I need to know why this is so fun. And I started looking at the little individual facets of it and what it delivers on that a lot of other games simply do not. And the first one we're going to talk about is exploration and rewarding exploration. Now, you know, maybe you're a AAA dev or something. You're like, what are you talking about? We do all kinds of exploration and reward. You know, if you come over here, there's a cool Easter egg. Like maybe this lamp has got somebody's initials carved in the back. Boom, Easter egg. You just got rewarded for exploring that area. Now, if you're a player, you've probably experienced something where you were exploring somewhere and you're like, oh my god, this is such a cool area. There's got to be something over here. There's got to be something hidden, and you know, you get back and you find it, and you're like, oh my god, there was something back here. And so you're looking, trying to figure out, like, oh, what's going on? Can I get in here? Can I do whatever? Only to be later disappointed once you realize that it was just another fancy Easter egg. There really was nothing to it. There was no payoff. That the reward was superficial. While there are plenty of superficial Easter eggs, they're not really tied into the exploration. They're just kind of there, all over the place. Exploration in this game is rewarded really in sort of like every facet, from looking for new customers to scouting like where you want to, you know, set up your next shop, and just being familiar with the town in case you need to run from the cops or something like that. Like, it's all rewarded in a meaningful way that impacts your gameplay. But that's not the only facet of exploration that this game engages in. It also has the mixing your different strains and your drug mixing station, right? There are so many things that you can mix together. I wonder how many combinations there are and how long it took to make that particular part of the game, because my god, are there so many combinations. And what's cool about that too is that adds to the replayability, but we'll get to that part a little bit later. First, I just want to talk about the exploration part of that, like just playing around and testing stuff, and then getting either a hilarious randomly generated name or coming up with your own hilarious or fun or whatever kind of name for the new drug that you just made. And then you get the added reward of, if you spend enough time exploring the different strains, you'll eventually find something really good that is profitable, and then that benefits you in game. Like, every aspect of exploration in this game is very rewarding. And in a meaningful way. So they kind of knock that aspect of the game out of the park. It's like, I don't know, it's like a decent sized stick with a gigantic carrot that drags its carrot balls on the ground behind you. You know, like, it's just like the exploration, every aspect of it is just really rewarding, right? Okay, now let's go back to the naming bit, because that's going to segue us into the next facet that this game does, and that's customization. You know, we've all talked and joked and memed about how, you know, when a game with a really good character creator comes out, that, you know, that's what you're going to spend the first 10 hours doing, is just designing your character, playing around, customizing it, trying to make it unique or neat, or putting your, you know, your own personal little fingerprint or touch or joke or whatever it is that you want to do, right? Like, that is just pretty engaging to be able to customize something to this level. And you get a healthy dose of that in this as well. Not only with how you want to set up your business, like, do you want to focus on the weed? Do you want to get into math, more focused on meth? Excuse me. Do you want to bulldoze, ahead as fast as you can to try and get to the cocaine market before you abandon everything? Or do you want to do a hybrid market where you do a little bit of everything? That's better. I just needed some tea. Whatever it is you want to do, all of those things are extremely viable. Like, you can do all of them, and it all works out. And you can also do them badly if you want. So there's a lot of, it actually does matter how efficient you want to be. But the game doesn't punish you too hard for being bad or sloppy. It just takes you a lot longer to maybe get things done because you're not going to bring in the profits, right? So it really lets you sort of not only customize what your character looks like, customize a fun thematic naming convention for your drugs, to the way that it even looks, right? For example, I have a methamphetamine strain that is doubled up on spicy or something. I can't remember what I do with it, but I've got it in here somewhere, right? But the end result is something called Sunstone. And it's pretty cool. And that's so that, all my stuff, of course, is Viking themed. Yorman Candy being our hottest seller right now. Somebody else came up with that name, but it was fantastic. So I was like, yeah, excellent name. So this is all customization. And it is customization, some of it, again, has game impact, which normally your cosmetic typically doesn't have an impact on your game, and that's fine. This has no impact on my game, but it does have impact on people that I co-op with, and it's great. It's great. So yeah, just a lot of customization in your gameplay experience, which segues us right into another aspect, and that's the replayability. So at first I wasn't sure, because you have to kind of invest a lot of time in getting set up and getting, your things figured out. So you wouldn't think that you would really want to start over all that much. But last night I was playing with some friends, and we decided to do some co-op, and we decided to start just a co-op world. And so we had to start over, which was interesting because I got to take a completely different approach to how I wanted to do things. Well, it wasn't a completely different approach. It was a slightly different approach to how I was doing things, but because of the experimenting phase and just how complicated this can be with all your different strands and stuff, or I guess these aren't strands, all these different mixes. Somebody's gonna roast me on that one. Those aren't strands. You're right. The mixes, they were mixes. But yeah, I don't have all the stuff memorized. I look there because it saves your recipes. Oh, this plus this makes this. What's this? Oh, it's Sleepy Longboat. But in the new game, I didn't have those. And I could have tried to remember, but I was just like, screw it, let's just go exploring again. Because, there are so many combinations. And then I was just making up new names, too. So it just felt like, with new combinations and new names and some of the looks coming out a little bit different, it just felt very fresh and new all over again. It was fun all over again. And I could jump back and forth between my single-player save and that co-op save, and both are going to be a very fun and engaging experience. So that gives you a lot of replayability, because the exploration has so much to it. There's so much going on in the customization, allows you to really just have a different experience every time you decide to start up a world, and that's super cool. Now this brings us to the fourth point. And that is the gameplay loop itself. The gameplay loop is just make drug, transport drug, sell drug, right? So you've got a creation process, which, gets to accumulate the inventory, so you get to see stuff happen. The transport, which, you know, if you choose to do everything during the day, is a little bit safer, but you can be riskier when it comes to night. Has like some risk benefit to it, or just if you want to just take some risks for fun, is there. And then the payoff where you make the sale and you get the money, and then, you know, numbers go up, right? Do thing numbers go up, which is never not going to be satisfying. Like, that's one of, like, the core satisfying elements in almost any video game ever. Do a thing and the numbers go up, right? But they even take a little bit of a nuanced approach to that, or like a medium nuanced approach to it, right? And that's that you have your cash, right? Like, that's what you get from your deals. But a lot of the stores are card only. They don't accept cash unless you're dealing with, like, nefarious folk. And in that instance, you cannot do card. And for those transactions, it's cash only. So you have to have some cash and you have to have some on card. But past that, you're also limited to how much cash you can deposit per week into your ATM before you get your weekly deposit limit, which 10,000 sounds like a lot until you really kind of get going, and then you're going to start hitting that limit. And when that happens, you can't deposit anymore because the authorities would be on to you, right? So you have to start laundering money if you want to get it onto your credit card, which you'll need to do to start making some of the bigger purchases, or the frequency, you know, of purchases that you're going to get into, right? So it just adds, like, even more to the gameplay loop. It gives you, like, a, you know, where you constantly have to do a little bit of choice, but, you know, at the end of the day, it is still just sort of, like, do thing numbers go up. But it's a very thematic way of doing it, which is going to segue us into our last point that we're going to talk about, and that's just how immersive the game is. Most, if not all people, are kind of familiar with how a drug deal works. And because of that, I did not know that you could buy sexy gas. Easter egg. Sorry, Molly, get out of here. So what were we saying? What was I saying here? Oh yeah, the immersion, right? Like, it's a very good topic for, like, easy immersion. Like, this is very easy to create an experience that feels immersive to the players. And when you can do that, the visuals aren't as important, and so you can do other stuff with your visuals. And so a lot of people are really leaning into just making goofy, hilarious characters, which then lends itself really well to, you know, giving yourself hilarious effects with the drugs. You know, watching people literally catch on fire because of, you know, the weed they're smoking. And then their head grows and they kind of float off down the street a little bit, right? You know, just... or they turn into a cyclops while they're high. You know, just a lot of hilarious fun because the visuals aren't necessary for the immersion. Whereas depending on what you're trying to do, some games do require a higher level of visual appeal for the immersion to really be there. You know, for example, if you're making a video game about like a movie, like a Marvel movie turned video game, you're probably going to need some decent visuals for that. You're going to have a lot of eye candy because, like, that's what a movie is. A movie is story and eye candy. A video game and you're goofing. Oh, I hit myself in the head. Oh, do not swing while looking at yourself. You will hit yourself in the head. Learn something new every day. And so that's going to segue us on to the final part, and that's just how bad some AAA companies are at designing video games. Okay, so basically, I think what I was trying to say in this section that I spent too much time talking about was, you know, your CEOs and your big shots and your shot callers who aren't necessarily players, who don't understand the player perspective, rely solely on formulas, and some of those formulas are getting more and more outdated. Basically, they just don't work all that well and often lead to complete failures in projects because what's really important just can't be put in a formula. So like the actual developers working on the game get their hands tied and have to try to shoehorn in things that just don't work or are a detriment to the game. And sometimes that's done for the sake of profit, but because the game turns into a failure, obviously there end up being no profit. So the formula didn't even make money. And that's happening more and more and more as we see, AAA struggle, and we see, indie games like Schedule 1 come out and just absolutely dominate. Yeah, when you actually understand what players want, you understand what it's like to be a player, and you're building games from that perspective instead of trying to build a game from a formula. This crazy cracked out mess of a game is what you get. Anyway, that's going to do it for this one. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.